That answers that question. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rayleigh Bradshaw, inspiring author of YA historical fiction, and today I'm bringing you the fall writing tag. Woohoo! This tag was created by the wonderful, the beautiful, the only Alexandra Roselyn. And she's like my woman crush, so you should definitely go and check her out. Her video was just like mouth-wateringly beautiful and delicious and fun and clever and cute and beautifully edited, and I feel like that should become part of your like yearly fall watch list, is her video of the original of this tag. Go watch it, it was beautiful. So I am super excited to do this tag because, as you will know from the last video I just posted, I absolutely love fall. And in my last video I got to share with you my fall favorites, and in this tag we're going to be talking a little bit more about the writing with the fall theme. So sit back, get comfortable, grab your favorite fall snack or beverage, and let's get right into this. I know I've answered this in a tag before, but I really don't like to listen to anything while I'm writing, especially not music. It just is a little bit too distracting for me. I do like to listen to things just before I write to kind of help me get inspired, and usually that would be classical music, or since I write historical fiction, I'll look up music from the time period that I'm writing. My main character in my current work in progress plays the violin, and so I'm always looking up violin music that she would have played at that time and listening to that, and I kind of have her theme violin music that she plays throughout the book. So I like to listen to that before I write, but as I'm writing, if I listen to anything at all, I will listen to ambient sounds. So I'll go to Ambient Mixer and look up the Western cattle drive type ambient sounds, and that is really helpful sometimes. It just kind of gets my creative juices flowing and makes me feel like I'm actually there in the story. But aside from those ambient sounds, which I don't even use all the time, just sometimes when I feel like I need it, but for the most part I just want it to be really quiet when I'm writing, and so that's one of the reasons I get up at 5 in the morning before anyone else is awake, and I write in total silence, and that's the way I like it. So kind of like with what do I listen to, I really don't like to eat or drink while I'm writing. It just becomes distracting, and I'm afraid I'm gonna get crumbs or things in my keyboard. And because eating for me is like, it's its own experience.
And something new was created.
Something to be enjoyed all on its own, and I don't want my writing to interfere with my ability to enjoy my food to the fullest, and then likewise I do not want my enjoyment of my food to distract me from my writing. So I keep those two things separate. Kind of a boring answer, but it's true. I don't really like to eat when I write. I do not like to write in the nighttime. I'm not functioning at my full capacity in the night. My creativity does not come alive at night. I'm one of those people that I'm just not a night owl, and I used to be when I was a teenager and then just after graduating from high school, but then I ended up moving to Brazil and blah 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 blah. A lot of things happened in my life and I became a morning person. Now I'm a morning person. That's when my brain is alive, and that's when I have more mental space to be creative, and so the perfect writing conditions for me are, it's too early for anyone else to be out of bed or for anyone else to bother me, and it's still kind of dark outside, and my room is quiet, and it's cool but not cold, and my kitty is sleeping close by. It's not perfect when he's climbing all over my keyboard, which is what usually happens. But after he climbs all over my keyboard for a little bit, he tends to, you know, fall asleep eventually. But the perfect conditions are, he's asleep, my husband's asleep, I'm the only one awake, and it's just me and my characters for a full hour in the early morning. Actually, I've never had a pumpkin spice latte. I'm just not a coffee person, but I do like pumpkin spiced other things. I went and got a pumpkin spice frappuccino the other day without coffee, and that was good. Basically, it's just flavored milk, right? With ice. Anyways, it was really delicious. But, so things that I used to like but now don't, writing-wise. I used to really like writing romance, and I still do, but it's changed. And I said once that I might do a video on this, but the way that I perceive romance and write romance has changed since I have been married, and I don't even know if that's the right answer, because I still like to write romance. I just don't like to write it in the way that I used to write it. Now I like to write it in a different way. I don't know. Let me come up with something else. I used to like writing at night, and now I don't. I guess that's a good one. This is Alexandra Roselyn's favorite holiday. It's one of my favorite holidays, but I would say Christmas probably still No, Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas to me are all wrapped up in like the same package. They're all my favorite altogether. But anyways, I think my favorite part is coming up with the idea in the first place, and then revisions and editing are probably my favorite parts. The initial drafting can be really hard, but even then, there are parts I really like about that. I love when I get into the flow of writing and it just starts to come to me. That actually happened this morning while I was writing. I had these vague ideas in my head of a certain character's backstory, and then as I sat there and was writing and dialogue between this character and another one, his backstory just started flowing from my fingertips, and it was so touching to me. And I was like, this is why I write. I love this so much. It's when the character becomes so real that it feels like they're the one telling you the story and you're just writing out everything that they are saying in your head. It's almost like this out-of-body experience. And it doesn't happen that often. I wish that would happen every time I wrote, but it doesn't. I feel like those moments of just like pure inspiration just pouring out of you are rare, and when they come, they're like pure gold that you just get to soak up, and and I love it. That is my favorite part about writing, without a doubt. That's my favorite part of writing. But it's not something that I rely on. It's not something that I plan for or think I can only write when I'm inspired like this, because then I would write once a year or once every 3 years, you know? Like, I would not write as often. And usually that inspiration only strikes me after I've been writing for a little while. And then as I'm writing, it just like something clicks, the floodgates open, and inspiration pours out. And so I wouldn't really even get that if I weren't writing in the first place. But yeah, that's my favorite part about writing, and if it's process-wise, my favorite process is probably revisions. Revisions and coming up with the idea in the first place. Oh gosh, so many things. Well, first of all, if I let myself go there, the thought of no one's ever going to read this or nobody's going to like it, that's a terrifying thought, but it's only scary for a little bit, and then I realize, okay, well, step back, really. Do you like this book? Do you enjoy writing it? And if the answer is yes, then who cares? Who cares if nobody likes it? Who cares if I never get it published? Sometimes there's a story in your head that just needs to get out, and it's good practice, if nothing else. And it's fulfilling to be able to start a project that you love and are passionate about and to finish it and see it through to the end. But if I let myself go there, yes, that can be a scary thought sometimes after putting so much effort into this book with the intention of getting it published and for other people to read it. It's scary to think that people won't like it, or that I'm not as good of a writer as I think I am, which I honestly don't think I'm that great anyway, so it's like, what if I'm even worse than the humble writer that I think I am? Anyways, that's a scary thought. And then as far as the writing process goes, what scares me the most is drafting. Drafting scares me until I'm actually doing it. Especially if I've gone a few days without writing, then yeah, the thought of sitting down and like, oh, I don't even know, I don't feel inspired, I'm not even really sure what I'm going to write when I sit down. Like, yeah, sure, I have my outline, but what if it just doesn't come out? Like, what if I can't get the words out? That can be a scary thought, and that's another reason why I think it's so important to write regularly. Even if you're not writing every day, write at the same time every day. Just make it something that becomes routine so you don't have to think about it and you won't give in to those fears, because it's like, it doesn't matter how I'm feeling, it doesn't matter what I think about my book, or if I don't feel inspired, none of that matters because it's just the time to write, and so that's just what I'm gonna do. This is the time of day where I sit down and just start writing stuff, regardless of how good or bad it is when it comes out, and then that gets me going, and then that opens the way for inspiration to come and for me to get creative and just let the words out. So yeah, I guess that's the scariest part to me. Oh, but then when it comes to, so that's when it comes to the writing process. When it comes to publishing, oh yeah, the question was writing and drafting, not publishing. But when it comes to publishing, everything is scary, so. So I kind of already answered this question. What I do is I just sit down and write. And I know a lot of people hate that advice, and I get it, because it's like, well, how do you expect me to just sit down and write when the problem is that I'm feeling blocked and I don't know what to write? Maybe you have been sitting down in your chair and just staring at that blank screen or the last words that you wrote and just thinking, I have no idea where to go from this. And honestly, the only way I get over that is that I have 1 hour to write every morning, and I pulled myself out of bed to do it. And so when I sit down to write and I'm just not feeling inspired and I don't really know what I want to write, I just think, okay, well, I have to write something. Even if it's bad, I just have to write something so that I can say I did my writing for the day, and so this hour set aside specifically for that doesn't go to waste. And then I just write stuff, and I'll even write stuff that I think is dumb. For instance, let's say I'm writing a scene about a boy and a girl who are going to pick pumpkins together, and in my outline I had written that this is the scene where they really realize that they care about each other, or maybe this is the scene, I'll have written a note like, oh, and then for some reason something happens where she notices that he actually likes her, and then she has to question her feelings and realizes that she likes him too. So I'll sit down to write and be like, oh, I didn't even know at the time that I wrote this outline what that something special happens is, and now I have to make it up. And so I'll almost like mock myself, and I'll just write something super cheesy, not even trying, just to move the story forward. And since I don't care, because I'm giving myself that freedom to write something dumb, like it's almost intentional, like I'm just gonna make this as dumb and as cheesy as possible, and giving myself that freedom to be like, hey, I can make this really bad. For some reason, it just cracks that shell that's blocking me, and I'll write something really dumb like, he said this, she said this. I don't know, it's such a bad example. I'm not explaining this very well, but basically allowing myself that freedom to intentionally write something bad releases me, and I suddenly feel freed and more inspired to write something good, because as I'm writing these bad things, all of a sudden little ideas will start coming to me, and I'll be like, ooh, that's good, I didn't think about that, and then it will switch from this cheesy bad mess that I intentionally made as bad as I could to something good. That might be really bad advice for like anybody else out there, but for me it really works. So yeah, that's what I do, is I just sit down and write regardless of how I'm feeling or how blocked I feel, and then I intentionally make it as bad as I can while still moving the story in the direction it's supposed to go. And then if that inspiration doesn't come and the good stuff doesn't start flowing, in my mind I'm like, okay, well this is just a placeholder then. This bad scene, I'm obviously not going to skim over that when I'm going through revisions or editing. I'm going to be like, wow, this scene is awful. And then I can fix it then, and at least I moved forward in the story and got the story going. But most of the time what will actually happen is that as I'm writing that bad scene, it'll turn into a good scene. So anyways, that's what I do, which is, I know, is probably kind of weird advice. So when I think of good world building, I think of consistency. So, for example, if you think about Harry Potter and the Gryffindor common room, for example, the Gryffindor common room starts to feel extremely familiar to the reader because we're going back there year after year after year, and so you are able to create this mental image in your mind at the beginning of the story, what the Gryffindor common room looks like and where the doors are, where the seats are, and things like that. And then as the years go by, the main characters are still going back to this location that feels familiar to the reader because we've been there before. And there are a lot of things like that in Harry Potter with the world building, where even as new, wild, and zany, magical things are being introduced throughout the stories, there are those constant, familiar spaces that we can come back to. And for me, that's good world building. And I think even when you're writing a fantasy, regardless of if you're writing a fantasy, a historical fiction, a contemporary, if in your world building you can create a scene that has some aspect that is familiar to the reader, and then make those things not change, let them be consistent throughout, and then write those things down. So when you describe a room, even in your mind when you're imagining a room, if you know exactly what the room looks like, the layout of the room and everything, you don't have to describe that layout perfectly. You just have to know where everything is, and maybe you draw it out so that you're not constantly moving the bed from this side of the room to that side of the room, or the table's not moving around, or the walls are suddenly changing color on us. Is if you know exactly the colors of the walls and where the furniture sits in the room, where the entry and the exits are, where the windows are, what direction the windows are facing, so you know, is it getting natural sunlight in the morning or in the evening, as the sun's rising or setting. And if you know those things, you don't have to describe them all at once, but throughout the story, as you describe those little things, you will be consistent because you know where everything is. So I know that's not perfect advice, but that's what I think of when I think of world building, is I need to know where everything is. I keep a map on my wall next to where I write, so that I know the trail that my characters are traveling on their cattle drive, and I have a good layout of the town in which the characters live, and the ranch that my protagonist's father runs. I know the basic layout of everything, and I have to have it written down and know it well enough so that as I'm describing things from one scene to the next, they are consistent with one another and nothing is going to clash. There's not going to be any information that clashes and kind of throws the reader out of the story and makes it feel like, oh yeah, this is a book somebody wrote. I think it totally depends on the story. The story that I'm writing right now originated with an idea. It was actually a challenge to myself. I had never written a Western before. I don't think I had never even read a Western, and I had watched very few Westerns in my life, even though I really liked watching old movies. And so I think it was just a challenge to myself. I was writing historical fiction already, and I thought, what's a setting I've never tried writing in? I've never tried a Western before. And then that idea, just a Western, what does a Western mean to me, sparked this idea for my story that just kind of came to me. The character came to me really fast. Other books that I've written have originated from, or books that I plan to write in the future, have originated from dreams that I've had. Since I write historical fiction, I guess most of them originate with the setting. And then the plot comes in, and then the characters come in, and then they all interact with each other and come together beautifully, hopefully. It's the day of the wedding in early autumn. The air smells like crisp apples, and the wedding is taking place in an orchard, surrounded by woods on all sides. As the bride steps out onto a carpet of rose petals, she sees the backs of the heads of all of the guests at the wedding. And she sees her sweetheart up ahead with the preacher all ready to wed them. She walks down the aisle. Something feels wrong, but she can't say what it is. She notices mists gathering around the perimeter of the wedding party, but she continues forward. And as she comes closer and closer to her beloved and the preacher, they start to fade. She blinks because she's not sure if she's seeing this correctly. And by the time she reaches the pulpit, there is no one there. She turns around and there are no guests in the seats. The music is still playing, an eerie organ sound. What happens next? That's That's your writing prompt. I just made it up just now on the spot because I don't know how to make up writing prompts. What do you think I am, a writer or something? That concludes this video. Thank you so much, Alexandra Roselyn, for tagging me in this and for creating this amazing tag. This was so fun to do and just like, so cozy and fall-y and autumny, and I love it. So now I have the pleasure of tagging a few people myself, and I am going to tag Don Cossack at Super Cossack, and Rebecca Rodriguez, Peggy Spencer, and Timmy at Vitimea Noemi. Am I saying your name right? Because it's such a pretty name. I want you to say the full thing in a video so that I can hear it. You ladies have all been tagged. I hope that you do it. I would love to see your autumny writing answers. And let me know if you do it so that I can go ahead and watch. And anyone else out there who's watching this video and has not been tagged in this and really wants to do it, please, by all means, consider yourself tagged by me, and you can say on your video that I tagged you because I did. But yeah, that concludes this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Rain, would you come and take a walk with me? We'll cross over the mountains and we'll reach the pale blue sea. I love you. I'm so glad.